And we're reading, actually, that was chapter 11, verse 26. In Parsha Re'eh, everybody say with me, Re'eh. Re'eh comes from the word Ra'ah, which means to see, para ver. Re'eh is a masculine, singular verb in the imperative form. A masculine singular verb in the imperative form. What does this mean? This is not just a word. There are other words that says to look, behold, observe. This word is more of a friendly, a family term. And when I study Hebrew, and I wish I still haven't been able to find one. I'm still looking for one. I'm sure there's one in the internet someplace. But I have a lot of Hebrew, English, Hebrew, Greek Bibles. I'm really looking for a Hebrew Spanish Bible. Now I have my Hebrew Bibles and I have my Spanish Bibles, and every time I study Hebrew, I always study it with a Spanish Bible. And the reason I study it with a Spanish Bible rather than with a English is that Spanish gives you more of the Hebrew flavor. Now, in English, most of our translations use the word see. How many of your translations say see or see or behold? Some of them say behold. Some of them say see. And to see something, to behold, yes, they're good English translations. But the Spanish, those of you that understand Spanish, in Spanish, we use the word mira. Mira. And in Spanish, this is the word mira. And in Hebrew, because look at this is singular. Now, Moses is addressing all the people. This is a teaching that Moses is giving, a summary. Remember, this is just a summary in the last month of Moses' life. A summary of everything that has happened in the last 40 years before they cross. He's not crossing before they cross. And he has all the people assembled. But when he talks to them here, and what's important about this word, re'eh, is that he's talking to the whole group, but he's using the word singular. He doesn't say miren. He says mira. And when he says mira, it's almost like un abuelo, un papá, hablando con su hijo, con sus nietos. Mira, mira, mijo. Mira, look, see. And it's in Hebrew, it's a tender word. It's not ra'ah, look. It's ra'ah, re'eh. It is mira. Almost like mira, 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 look, see. But it's not to everybody. And it is for everybody, but for everybody, it's individual. Like we're a group here. But Adonai is telling you individually, see, mira lo que te voy a decir. Look what I'm going to tell you. Consider is another good translation. Mira, consider. Mira, consider. See what I'm going to tell you. And what's interesting is, again, this is in the masculine. Now, when Adonai speaks, and this is of such importance, again, remember when the scriptures were written and in what culture it was written and by who it was given to Moshe. Adonai gave this to Moshe. This is the word of Adonai. This is not the word of mankind. This is not the word of our culture today. And today, in fact, today, they have Bibles written that are neutral Bibles, or neutered Bibles, I guess we should say. But the responsibility of observance belongs to the men. Every male is responsible to observe Torah, to bring Torah to his family. In the world, religion, and in almost every religion, especially within the Christianities out there, religion is a woman's thing. Have you ever been to churches? I remember growing up, going to church every Sunday, and it was mostly the women and children that were in the church. Sometimes outside the church, all the guys were out there, all the men were there smoking or talking and, going about things. In fact, in many congregations, nothing is done unless the women do the work. Well, Adonai's way, Haderech Yahweh, the way of Yahweh, is different than religion, different than the Christianities. It is the responsibility of the men. Men, re'eh, mira, mijo, mira, mijo, look, my son. And what does he want them to see? What does he want each individual male that's in front of him, every individual male, what does he want him to see? He says, see, I set before you today a blessing, bracha, and a curse, uklala, a curse. A blessing, bracha, a brachot, blessings, plural. Uklalot, curses, plural. Mira, adelante de ti pongo. In front of you I put la bendición y la maldad. I place before you a blessing, a curse. And to every one of us men, Adonai sets a blessing and a curse. Now again, we're not talking about salvation. This is for the saved. Always remember, when we talk here, I'm not talking evangelically to bring people to Adonai. You don't bring people to Adonai this way. You must be in Adonai. You must be redeemed. And to the redeemed, these are redeemed people. These are people that are bought out. These are people that are in the family of Elohim already. And to the family of Elohim, he says, I give you a blessing and a curse. A blessing is not salvation, and a curse is not damnation. We're not talking about salvation or damnation. And that's where a lot of people get it confused. We're talking about people who are already believers. Now every male here, we have a blessing and a curse in front of us. Like right now, all men, stick out your hand. Stick out your hand right there. In your hand, Adonai today sets a blessing and a curse. A blessing and a curse. We could be blessed, we could be cursed. What does the blessing and the curse depend on? A blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh our Elohim that I enjoin on you Chayom today. A curse if you disobey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim and leave Chaderech, the way I have marked out for you today, by going after other gods you have not known. How many of you want to be blessed? How many of you want to be cursed? It's up to us. It's up to us. A blessing and a curse is up to us. It's not up to Adonai. It's not up to the world. It's not up for government, education, and all that. It's up to us men. And for our families that Adonai has privileged us to be the heads of and to minister to. The blessing if we obey, the curse if we disobey. The blessing if we obey every commandment, every mitzvah, mitzvot in the plural. You probably heard me say mitzvah, 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 mitzvah. It says it 4 times there, mitzvah, mitzvah, mitzvah. A commandment. And again, when it's talking about mitzvah, we're going to talk about hukim and mishpatim in a little while, but we're talking about the mitzvot, the commandments. And there's 10 commandments, not 9 suggestions. The 10 mitzvot. If you obey the 10 mitzvot, Adonai will bless you. But what does it say? If you leave the way, if you disobey the commandments of Yahweh and leave the way, leave chaderech, a curse. By the way, the ultimate curse is death. And the ones who die with the ultimate curse of death, of course they're saved, if they were believers in the first place. But Adonai could take someone before his time. If you leave the way of Yahweh, if you are a believer and you decide, I'm going to go into the world, and you go back into the world, and you start going back to all those things that you used to follow before you were saved, all of a sudden, Chasatan takes over. Adonai doesn't want you no more. In a sense, he leaves you alone. He takes his hands of protection over you. And when Adonai takes his hands of protection over you, guess who's going to get you? I've seen that in people's lives several times, where these people were followers of Adonai. They might have been on fire for Adonai, wanted to be a pastor, a teacher, wanted to be serve Adonai, many times witnessing to people and telling people you're wrong and you're this, and then all of a sudden what happens? Something happens and they leave Adonai, they leave the way, chaderech. And all of a sudden, they lose their lives. They don't lose their salvation, as it says in 1 Corinthians 5, 1 Corinthians 3:10 and following, and other verses. But Adonai takes their life. This is what we call the sin unto death. 1 John, 1 Corinthians 11. We have those verses in hand. A blessing and a curse I set before you, if you leave the way, when Yahweh your Elohim has brought you into the land that you are to enter. And one of the things that they did when they entered, they went into the middle of the land, the heart of the land of Israel, north of Jerusalem, and there was 2 mountains there. And the 2 mountains are Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. The blessing on Mount Gerizim, the curse on Mount Ebal. And they got together, and all Israel was in the valley. And the priests got on this mountain, and another set of priests got on this mountain. And these priests on these mountains, as we're going to see in a couple of weeks, shouted out the blessings. And they echoed throughout the valley. And these priests on this mountain shouted out the curses, and they echoed into the valley. the blessings and the curse on these two mountains, and they spoke them from this mountain, from this mountain. And it's up to us to follow. It's up to us to, if we want the blessings, to obey. Now, if you want the curses, then leave Adonai. If you want to be cursed, go back into the world. Now, that's not an option for me, and that's not an option for everyone here either. Now, this also applies, and let me tell you, young people, because, in fact, this is why I really want all the Torah heroes here this morning. We want to bring up our children before Adonai. Our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, we want to bring them up before Adonai. And usually when children are small, they're Torah heroes. All of us were Torah heroes when we were small. Even though we might have been in catechism or Sunday schools or any of these things that, in almost every faith, children have such a love for Adonai. Everyone's a Torah hero. Everyone's a Bible hero. So many people, as I have worked in the prisons, have told me, oh, I know all those verses. I learned them in Sunday school. But what happened? A choice. The other day I saw a person as I was going into a restaurant, and he was sitting right there, just sitting, a bum, a homeless person, a person that, and he's just sitting there, and you could tell that he was on something, and he says, "Can you give me some money?" And I asked him the question. I asked him this question. He says, I said to him, "What were the choices that you made to get you where you're at today?" And all of a sudden he kind of looks up. "I don't know." He says, "I don't know." Now, because I asked him that, I didn't want to just, I gave him something. I really don't usually do that, but because I asked him that question, I didn't want him to think that I was being, prideful or looking down at him. But that's a question. With every homeless person, with every person out there in the world, that's a question that they need to answer. What got me to this place where I'm at? In fact, that's a question that we could ask ourselves here. Before you came to Adonai, before you came to follow Him, before you got saved, you might have grown up in religion. You might have grown up with Sunday school, with we grew up hearing the Word. Even if you heard the Word and you were in Catholic Church and the priest read from the gospel, and in the gospel, Jesus does this, Jesus does that, the apostles do this, and the epistles, you heard it, we all heard it. And that's good word. That word is word that is seated in our hearts since we were small, regardless of where it came from, it was the Word. Regardless of where we've been, it was the Word. But what happened when we became teenagers? We made choices. We made choices. And those choices have gotten us in trouble. Those choices now, we could look back from the moment that we got saved, we could look back and say, I have all these regrets. If I would have only kept on, if I would have only studied, if I would have only prayed more, if I would have, and we could look back at all the possibilities that could have been. The Word will bring blessings. If we push the Word away, it'll bring curses. Bendiciones vienen. con la palabra de Elohim. Pero maldiciones vienen cuando rechazamos la palabra, rechazamos a Adonai. We push him away. Because I want to do my own thing. I want to do what I want. Torah heroes, now that you are young. Torah heroes, now that you are young. Stay in the way of Yahweh. Follow his way. Take that good road, that Haderech, and keep it. Sad to say, since I've been preaching since the early 70s, I was ordained in 74, so many of the young people that have grown up hearing the word, hearing Torah, have made the choices where they've ended up in prison. Some are dead now because they did not want to follow the way. They left Haderech. In fact, my heart breaks now for Brother Angel and the family. And my heart breaks that the way was there. The way was, don't give up the way. Never give up the way. And if you give up the way, just get on your knees and say, Father, I repent. I want to come back. Because there will be a line that apostasy might come in. And if you apostatize and you die and as apostate, there is no hope for salvation anymore. Let's go on here. In chapter 12, verse 1, we begin what has been termed the Deuteronomic Code. Over here, Moses gives a detailed summary of the Mishpatim and Hukim. He begins now in verse 1. Now these are the Hukim and Mishpatim. These are the laws, the customs, the statutes, the rules, the regulations, whatever words the English has. It's Hukim and Mishpatim, that you must keep and observe in the land that Yahweh, your Elohim of your fathers has granted you to possess for as long as you live in the land. And in the year 721, actually in the year 930, the kingdom of David, the kingdom of Solomon, when Solomon died, was divided in two. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And because they did not keep the Mishpatim, the Hukim, because they did not keep the mitzvot, in the year 721 before Messiah, Yeshua, the northern kingdom of Israel was sent into captivity by Assyria. The Assyrians came and led him captive, and 10 of the tribes were led captive, and they haven't returned yet. Parts of them have returned, but the 10 tribes are out there still in Afghanistan and Uzbekistan and Pakistan and China and India and Burma, all those places. They're scattered everywhere. They're still scattered in the east. In the year 586, the southern kingdom of Judah and Benjamin, the temple was destroyed in 586, and they were led captive to Babylon for 70 years. And though they returned, think of this, from 586, the southern kingdom of Judah, till the future coming of Messiah, Israel has been in exile. Yeah, they came back with Zerubbabel, with Ezra. They did build a second temple, but when they came back, they were under Medo-Persia. They were under Greek rule. They were under Roman rule. They were dispersed. In 1948, the United Nations allowed a state of Israel to be formed. But Israel today is not ruled by Adonai. We have no high priest today. We have no king today. For Israel to be Israel of Elohim, they have to have a high priest and a king. That's why we here are the real Israel. Why? Because we have a high priest and a king. Who's our high priest? Yeshua. Who's our king? Yeshua. Yeshua is our high priest and our king. This is the Israel of Elohim that Paul talks about in Galatians 6. The Israel of Elohim. Not the race. Not by blood. Because remember, now with baptism, whether you are Jew or Greek, whether you are male or female, rich or poor, being immersed into Yeshua, now you become the descendants of Abraham, the Israel of Elohim. You are the olive tree of Israel, and every one of you, regardless of what your background is, if you are baptized into Messiah Yeshua, you are part of that olive tree. We are one in Messiah. That's why Paul calls us the one new man. This is the one new man. Oh, that's another story. By the way, we are going to be doing that presentation called the Olive Tree Fellowship here in a month or so. Now, first thing, verse 2. This is Israel. We can't do this today, so Mr. T, Alejandro, and some of you guys don't get your hammers and axes yet. Watch what it says. You must destroy completely all the places where the nations you dispossess have served their Elohim. On high mountains, on hills, under any spreading tree, you must tear down their altars, smash their pillars, cut down their sacred poles, set fire to their carved images of their gods, and wipe out their name from this place. Boy, how many of you have that zeal of Gideon, the Gideon zeal, where you see a statue and you just go get your axe and you chop it down? Boy, in South Valley, where I live, just recently, this has been a very, since I growing up, it's been a very religious part of town. Very Catholic, very Baptist, and a couple of others. And just recently, right there on Isleta, I don't know if you guys have seen that, on Isleta, south of Bridge Street, they built a Buddhist monastery. And all of a sudden they put, this was an old house, and it used to be a little farm. It used to belong to some people we used to know. 2 houses, a beautiful little farm. They had horses, and they had, cornfields and stuff like that. And somebody came, the Buddhists. It had been abandoned for several years. Somebody came and they built a monastery out of it. And they built these big giant statues and all these. Actually, it's probably a Hindu place because all these Hindu gods and goddesses, statues, giant statues. And the zeal of Gideon, sometimes I pass by, and the zeal of Gideon, I just want to go and just smash them, or, do some target practice or something like that. Of course, we can't do that. Please do not do that at home. Do not do that. Because we live in exile. We don't live in our own country. We don't have a king. We don't have a high priest that will protect us from that. They'll actually put us in jail. But think of this. This is the zeal of Adonai. This is the heart of Adonai. In other words, what Adonai is telling us is idolatry is something that must be abhorred. Idolatry is something that is bad. In fact, little Francisco Lior, is learning bad. And anything that is bad, I go, ah. And now, the other day, he saw something over there, goes, ah. And so I'm teaching him, that's bad, Idolatry is It's something that we must avoid. Something that will destroy us. Now, when we think of idolatry, most of the time we think of idols. Israel is an idol-free land. Israel must be an idol-free people. We, the Israel of Elohim, must be idol-free. That means that there should be nothing that should come between us and Adonai. And by the way, where our treasure is, there our heart will be. And where our heart will be, there our treasure will be. If you spend more money on anything that is not of Adonai, that's a, you know what, really, in fact, we're only on several verses and we have so much more to go. But let me just take this rabbit trail. So many times when people talk about church or, oh, I don't go to church. Those preachers, all they want is your money. They're always asking you for money. Money. That's all they want. Like that, they could fly their airplanes and they could, drive their Cadillacs and they could live in this, multi-million-dollar homes and stuff like that. But then, where do they give their money to? To their gods, to their things, to their clothes, to their cars, to their sports teams, to their music groups, to their casinos, to their... They spend more money on the world and on the things that will never make than what people give to Adonai. Hopefully no one here gives more to the world than they do to Adonai. Because that's where a curse could come, by the way. Okay, let's go on. Verse 4, you must seek me. You must seek Yahweh your Elohim only in the place he himself will choose from among the tribes to set his name and give a name a home. By the way, look at that. Verse 12, chapter 12, verse 4 and 5. Verse 11. Verse 13. Verse 18. Verse 21. Verse 27. And on. He uses that same phrase. Only in the place where Yahweh gives his name a home, which is Jerusalem. Sacrifice must only be in Jerusalem. In the olden days, they would sacrifice on every hill. And Adonai says, destroy all these things, all these sacred poles. By the way, the word sacred pole there in the Hebrew is what's called a phallic symbol. Those of you know what that is. It's the Washington Monument. It's the spires on top of churches. These were pornographic symbols in the ancient world, religious pornographic symbols. And churches have them. Washington, D.C. has them. The Vatican has them. All kinds of places have them. Adonai says, destroy those phallic symbols. Destroy those sacred poles. All those things, destroy them. Come to Jerusalem. Rejoice in Jerusalem. You will have shalom. It's the place of rejoicing. And there in the presence of Adonai, bring your tithing, your offering. Come and bring your tithe. And when you bring your tithe, also bring more so that you could rejoice and you could come and eat to your, to the content. By the way, let me focus on the verse 20, 12:20. In the book of Genesis 1, before the flood, before the flood, Adonai gives us all the greenery there is to eat, all the greenery. He gives us the fruit-bearing plants with their seeds. He gives us the fruits, the vegetables, the green, and let me tell you, that's the best thing to eat. If you want to be healthy, what should you eat? The greens. If you want to be healthy, what you should eat? That which Adonai has provided with enzymes, and that's the most important thing. But I heard someone say something recently that kind of clicked into my mind. They said, after the fall, people are eating Gentile food. That's not true. Between the creation of Adam and the time of the flood, everyone ate greenery and vegetables. All humans ate greenery and vegetables. The only ones that were meat eaters were the animals that Adonai created to be scavengers. Always remember, scavengers are good for the environment. Adonai created scavengers. Adonai created the pig. He created the raptor birds. He created all these animals. Why did he create them? So that they could eat up what is dead. That's the purpose of scavengers. All scavengers are unclean. Non-scavengers are clean. But the scavengers are the unclean foods. And by the way, when Adonai talks about meat, it's the word for food. Food. And the majority of food is fruits and vegetables. But Adonai, after the flood, in Genesis 8, after the flood in 9, Adonai gives meat. Basar, he gives meat for us to eat. So, Adam to Noah were vegetarians. But after Noah, Adonai allowed meat to be eaten as food. Now, what's interesting is to Noah, and we know that what we call kosher started with Noah. At least for eating meat. Remember, Adam to Noah, they were all kosher because there is no unkosher fruits and vegetables. But not all fruits and vegetables, or fruits and things that would be considered vegetables, are food. Correct? You don't eat poison ivy. When Adonai says you could have all the greens, it's not talking about poison ivy, by the way. Do not eat, or anything else. There's mushrooms. How many love mushrooms? Mushrooms are packed with vitamin D. How many need vitamin more D? We all need more vitamin D today. Mushrooms, eat mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, and But not all mushrooms are edible. Right? Don't go into the forest and say, oh, look, there's a mushroom, let me eat it. You could die. Well, when it says all food, always remember, food is what's edible, not what's there. And so after the flood, Adonai gives us meat to eat, edible meat. But before the flood, Adonai tells Noah, you are to get 2 of unclean animals and 7 pairs of clean animals. Now look at that. How come that's never been taught? And most of the time, even in Sunday school, you see everything 2 by 2. You see pigs 2 by 2, which is true. But you see a lamb 2 by 2. It doesn't say a lamb 2 by 2. It was 7 pairs of lamb. To the people that write Sunday school or Sabbath school storybooks, please include that there was 7 pairs of the clean. Why was there 7 pairs of the clean? For 2 reasons. Because Adonai only accepts clean animals for sacrifice. And Noah sacrificed the 7th pair of every clean animal, of every clean bird, all the clean animals. Adonai received the sacrifice. Well, why the other 6? So that they could be domesticated and eaten for food. That's your food. Now, watch what it says in verse 20. When Yahweh your Elohim enlarges your territory, as he promised you, and you say, I should like to eat meat. Now remember, Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelites, throughout their history have been primarily vegetarians. You go to Israel today and you get a very good vegetarian Mediterranean diet. But if anyone should say, I would like to eat meat, how many like to eat meat? You know, how many like a good T-bone steak every once in a while? A ribeye, you know, a little red chili with carnitas, you know, real carne de res, un caldo de res. Oh, I love caldo de res. You know, una tacos de barbacoa. Woo! They're the best. I should like to eat meat. If you want to eat meat, you may eat as much as you like. Please underline that. Don't let anybody tell you you can't eat meat. Scripture says here, if you want to eat meat, you may eat as much as you like. But we're talking about clean meat. We're talking about kosher meat. And it goes on to say, go with me to chapter 14, verse 3. We're going to skip so much. Chapter 14, verse 1. No, verse 3. You must eat nothing that is detestable. Something that is detestable is something that is detestable to Adonai. To Adonai. These are the animals you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, gazelle, roebuck, ibex, antelope, onyx, mountain sheep. You know, elk is in there too, and all these. How many are hunters? How many are hunters? Oh, hunting is so good. Remember, Robert, we went over there, and Robert was driving the truck, and I was on the passenger side, and I don't know if I saw it or Robert saw it. He says, look, there's an elk over there. He got out, right there, and just fell, right, Robert? Just fell. Oh, I love elk meat. That was. In fact, we caught 2, right? I caught one, and Robert's dad caught one, and so we. Oh man, elk is good. How many like elk? You know, anytime you want to invite me to your house for elk meat, you're welcome. These are the animals you may eat. You may eat any animal that has divided cloven hoof and that is ruminant. Of those, however, that are ruminant and those that have the divided cloven hoof, you may not eat the following: the camel, the rabbit, the hyrax, which are ruminant but have no cloven hoof. You must hold them unclean. The pig, el puerco. The pig. In fact, can you imagine we call pig el puerco? We call him the unclean. The Spanish word for a pig is the unclean. Shouldn't that give us a little hint? So the pig, he mentioned the pig is special mention. So the pig, which though it has a cloven hoof is not remnant, you must hold it unclean. You must not eat the meat of such animals nor touch their dead bodies. nor touch their dead bodies. And so all these animals, especially the pig. Anybody know what a matanza is? A matanza is an anti-Semitic free meal to find out who the Jews were in Spain. Because in Spain, when some of our ancestors who were Jews that had converted to Catholicism on the outside, crypto-Jews we call them, and what the city would do, the bishop would do, is they would have a free meal for anybody that wants a free meal, a community free meal. A matanza is a community free meal where anybody could go and have all the meat you want. The only problem was that the meat was pig. And our ancestors would not go to that. So once they were found out that they would not go to that, oh, these guys are Jews because they don't want to come and eat free food, pig meat. Of all that live in the water, whatever has fins and scales may be eaten. You must not eat anything that does not have fins and scales. You may eat all the clean birds, but the following you must not eat: the vulture, the griffin, the osprey, the kite, the several kinds of buzzards, ravens, the ostrich, the owls, the seagulls, hawks, owls, pelicans, vultures, and storks. He gives all of them. You may not eat them. You must hold all winged animal creatures, creepy crawlers, as unclean. You must not eat any animal that has died a natural death. So if you're going down the road and you see a deer there, roadkill, or died a natural death, do not pick it up and eat it. It is not food. It is not rendered food anymore. Now, you may give the food to an alien who lives in your towns or sell it to the foreigners. So, and we're not talking about the proselytes here. We're talking here about the Gentiles. So you may give it to them. You may sell it to them. They could eat it. They could eat anything that is unclean, but we can't. Others may. Always remember that maxim. Others may. I can't. The Gentiles can. We, as the body of Adonai, must not. We must hold all this as tamai. Ay, ay, ay. Chapter 16 deals with the three pilgrim feasts. Chapter 16, verse 16. 3 times a year, all your menfolk are to appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place he chooses, again, Jerusalem, in the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, the feast of tabernacles. No one must appear before Yahweh empty-handed, but every man must give what he can in proportion to the blessing that Yahweh has given him. We miss so much. There's so much. Let's go ahead and stand. Father, we could only give insight into several things every year, Father. But as your people come every year, as they study your Torah, because the responsibility to study is not to the teacher, but each one of us must be a student of your Torah. And that we could listen to your Torah on a daily basis. We give you honor, glory, we give you praise. Yevarechecha Yahweh va'ish merecha. A'ir Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panav elecha. Vayasem lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift